So I'm now into month 9 of making Alia Bhatt's Met Gala Saree, and it is the longest and hardest project I've ever had to do. So I wanted to document the journey because it's been quite a journey. When I saw Alia Bhatt on the red carpet, I was completely blown away. Sabyasachi did such a good job of marrying together Indian craftsmanship with modern couture, and I've never seen anything like it. As a crafter who gets bored quite easily, it's the sheer amount of skills involved in making this that really drew me in. And I thought about it for a good month before I was like, I need to have this in my life. The first thing with these kind of projects is to pick apart how it's made so that I can buy the material. The saree itself is made from a minty net type of material, and the pleated part looks like it has so much fabric that it must be panelled to give that extra gather at the bottom. The theme for the Met Gala last year was Garden of Time, and so Sabyasachi achieved this by putting lots of floral, appliqué and organza flowers over the top of it, and then also doing some floral hand embroidery. So first I started with the net base. Sarees are usually made up of one continuous piece of fabric, but this has been played with in the past with different designers who've gone on to make pre-pleated sarees, or in this case, a saree with additional panelling or additional drapes. The first thing I did was get to work on the panels, which was a job in itself. It involved cutting about 22 triangles out of the net fabric, trying to make them as even as possible, and then sewing them all together, and trying to also hide the seams, which was a bit of a task. Once they're all sewn together, they create this really nice flared look, so it's similar to a lehenga skirt. And then secondly, I started on the base florals. For these big patches here, I didn't have the fabric that Sabyasachi uses, so I needed to create something similar. I tried a few ways of doing this, one being to use some floral satin fabric that I had, and I thought I'd try and use these leaves here, so I cut one out and sewed it down, but it didn't blend well with the net, and it also puckered so much, which made the whole thing a complete mess. I figured out that I needed a sheer fabric to work with to minimise the weight on the net, and so that it moved well with the base. And I also needed to hold the fabric taut to prevent all the puckering under the sewing machine, which is when I came across free motion embroidery using a sewing machine. This is when you use an embroidery hoop to sandwich all of the fabrics that you're working with together, and then you guide the fabric around to sew the pattern down. Essentially, you're using the needle to draw your pattern on and also fix it down. I drew out tons of white flowers, figured out where to place them on the net, and sewed them down one by one. I won't lie, this took forever, and the work wasn't even done then, because after I'd sewn it all down, I needed to cut around all of the edges to cut the flowers out. And then I needed to add the pink flowers and the green leaves. Once this was completed, I added the next layer of florals. Now these flowers use the same free motion technique to draw out an outline onto organza. I used 2 different thread colours to match the original as closely as I could, and they looked amazing once they're on. They add so much texture to the saree and give it a bit more of a 3-dimensional effect. The final part of the base flowers was adding these much smaller organza flowers which are dotted around the saree. My machine won't work with the gold thread for some reason, so I had to learn a new technique called Ari Embroidery. This technique I learnt from YouTube, and it took forever. I stretched my fabric across a frame, and each flower took me about 5 minutes to do. And when I'd filled the entire sheet, I took it off and cut out the flowers ready to be placed. At this point, I've managed to finish the base flowers for the Pallu and halfway through the skirt. For my next video, I'll be showing you the embroidery, which is where the true artistry of Indian craftsmanship comes through. It's the kind of thing that you can't see at first, but the more I looked into the saree, the more amazed I was by how much detail was in the thread work. Through this short series, I'd love to show just how much love and craftsmanship goes into these beautiful pieces that we wear, and to honour the amazing artisans and designers who put their efforts and skills towards creating such beautiful pieces. So follow along if you'd like to see this project through with me.